important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
And I'm Giff.
All right. And we are working our way through 2016 here. Hopefully, last week's episode was well received. Hopefully, maybe somebody went out and watched Popstar for the very first time and thought it was as funny as I did. If that describes you, let me know because I would love to hear that right now.
I hope somebody never stopping watching that show.
That's right. It's just, it's what a message it has.
Yes. Very humble message.
Yes. All right. Well, tonight we're going to veer off into television. More specifically, 2016, we talked about how streaming was becoming such a big deal. And Gifford has chosen a television streaming series for us to talk about. Take it away, Giff.
Thanks, Brad. Tonight we are going to dive into Stranger Things. This premiered
into the Upside Down.
Yes, into the Upside Down.
Dive right into it.
We are. Well, hopefully we can get back out with the help of Hopper. We'll survive. So July 15th of 2016, all the episodes for season 1 dropped, and it was just this, in my opinion, this huge thing. I think it absolutely. I don't know if Netflix needed to be revitalized at this point, but I know a lot of people, once the buzz of this show started circulating, people really came to Netflix. I think it really boosted their membership quite a bit. And I know, like, when the subsequent seasons dropped, like, it was a big deal. People who had dropped Netflix would come back just for this show because it was just, it's just so awesome. What do we love on this show, Brad?
We love nostalgia.
Yes.
More than anything.
And the Duffer Brothers, the creators, writers, and director of this show, definitely gave us plenty of that. Set in 1983 with the music and the clothes, the hair, just everything about it. Just sunk you right back in. So it was just a lot of fun. I remember binging this with Courtney. I think we probably knocked it out in just 2 days' time. Just absolutely loved it. And it was just great. Brad, what were your initials and impressions? Did you watch it as soon as it came out?
I watched it with my son. So this was right around the time where he was getting really into like horror movies and that kind of thing. And even though I was never really into that, it became something that we shared that I would go watch and do with him. I don't remember what year A Quiet Place came out. We didn't talk about it this year, so it must not have been this year, but it was around this time. And I remember we went to that in the movie theater together, and that was like one of the first, times where he went to the movie theater for it, like a horror, scary movie that was, not just a Disney movie. And there was so much hype about this show. People they went nuts for that opening sequence just because of the font coming onto the screen and the music,
keyboards,
and like you said, we love nostalgia. So I was interested. It wasn't exactly the content that I watched in the 80s, so it didn't hit me quite as hard maybe as some people, but I did like it. It was enjoyable. It seemed to be one of those shared experiences because like so many people were watching it and you could binge it and watch it all, right at once. So, I've been up and down with it since it came on, but I have watched it all, and I watched it from the beginning there, right when it came out, and it was something that we could watch together. We don't watch it together anymore because of schedules and because the kids are just going to stay up all night and watch whatever they want anyway, but that is how it started.
Yeah. Well, and so in 1983, so this is November of 83, we would have been in second grade. Is that correct? I think during this
83. Yeah, beginning of second grade, I think, into one of those two.
I think it was, and what I was
85, 86 was fourth grade. So that means 84, 85, third, 83, 84. There you go, second grade.
So while I was watching this time, I was honestly thinking about your siblings. Because these kids are in middle school at this time. So I don't know if it was, I can't remember if they're in what grade they're in, but this would have been probably like, Danica's
Well,
class.
so my brother graduated in 87, so 5 years before that, yeah, I mean, he'd be like eighth grade, and she'd been like fifth. So yeah, they're
Okay.
they're pretty close.
Yeah. So I was kind of thinking about maybe what they thought about it being that, they would have been in, middle school or right before it at this time. So yeah, just, it's just such a fun throwback show. And the fact that you've got, this scary horror aspect to it, was kind of chilling. And, we'll get into the episode as we go along, but, I just thought it was such. It's funny to say it was a fresh take because it references so many of the tropes of the '80s, but it really kind of was something different that was on television, I think, at this time. So I really enjoyed it for sure. So we are going to get into the cast right off the bat here. Of course, our big name in this show is Winona Ryder, and to me, this kind of rejuvenated her a bit. I kind of look back through her credits leading up to this, and she had been in stuff, but nothing that really hit big like when she was earlier in her career. So I looked at it as this is kind of a brave new role for her, because it's not a physically um, what's appealing look for her, but she
No.
dives right in and plays it so perfectly. What were
Yeah,
your
yeah, it was a great casting because so anybody that, you know, you got all these kids and they're all unknowns. But if you're
Mhm,
trying to bring in your audience, which is really going to be people that are more like our age for, when new, it's kind of like Cobra Kai, where like it could
mhm,
span the generations. But so to bring in somebody like her that everybody remembered and was very well liked, and to have her kind of be the thing that draws you in, that was a brilliant move. And it was good. It was smart for her. It was like a career renaissance type of thing for her
mhm.
because she had. I mean, she was great back then, but it's not like she was a big star the last 20 years. And I mean, you
Yeah.
saw her here and there, but it's not like she was a big star or anything.
She wasn't on the marquee necessarily. And then she comes
Yeah.
into this and just, absolutely rocks it. Well, I'm going to skip down to the other well-known person that's in this episode and in this cast, and that's Matthew Modine.
Yeah.
These were really the
Who we brought up
two.
last week.
Yes, we certainly
Looked like
did.
Matthew Modine with a peanut allergy.
So we got Matthew Modine in this playing Dr. Martin Brenner, who's in charge of this clandestine laboratory, um, and of course is a pivotal figure throughout the series. You can argue whether he's a good guy or a bad guy. Obviously, I would lean more towards bad. But these are the two actors that are in this that are well known. I didn't really. I mean, the kids in this, a lot of them are on their second or maybe third credit. And of course, they're young. So, relative all unknowns. And, that's just awesome. Of course, we've got Millie Bobby Brown plays 11, our telekinetic, you know, girl in this. She's paired up with the fearsome foursome of Finn Wolfhard plays Mike Wheeler. We got
He's
Gatton.
one
Is that
person. So I didn't know any of these kids either, but he is the one who has gone on to do something that I've watched. He was in,
Mhm.
well, there's one other one, but like he was in a big movie. He's in the new Ghostbusters movies,
Yes.
and
Correct.
so that's another one where like my whole family went, but like my kids were a little more excited maybe because they don't care as much about Ghostbusters, but oh, Finn Wolfhard's in it, and then it's more
Mhm.
interesting too. So
Yep, for sure. We've got Dustin Henderson played by Gatton. Can you help me out there?
Matarazzo.
Matt Tarazzo. We've got Caleb McLaughlin plays Lucas Sinclair. We've got the Doug from Hangover. Um, Will played by, let me see if I can find him here, Noah Schnapp. I just thought it was funny. This first
Oh,
episode
he
is the
disappears
majority
right away.
is the majority of what he's in this whole thing, and it's only the first 9 minutes of episode one. Of course, he
Right.
comes
Well,
back late
title
in.
of episode one is the disappearance of
Yep,
Will Byers. So
absolutely. So
But yeah, I get what you're saying about the Hangover there,
yeah,
the guy that disappears.
yes, that's our good friend Doug. Um, so those are the five main kids in it, but we do have other young child stars in this. Uh, what is it? Natalia Dwyer plays Nancy Wheeler. Dyer,
She's
sorry.
also I watched a movie she was in called Yes God Yes, which was like this take on like she was religious, but like it was like a sexual movie, but like in a not in a bad way. Like it was like
Coming of
cute,
age.
coming of age, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was actually pretty. I remember it was on Amazon or what, but it was a pretty good movie too, and it was really well received. That's why I read about it and watched it.
Okay.
So she's one I have seen in other things too. That particularly.
And she was good in it, I'm assuming.
Yeah, she's great. I like her a lot. I kind of have a crush on her too. I think she's extremely cute.
She is very cute. And I think again, great casting in this. I mean, she's the cute innocent girl. Of course, she falls for Steve Harrington in here, played by Joe Keery, who I think again he plays this role well. He's supposed to be the big ladies' man, badass, but he does have some vulnerability that he plays well. So I really like him in this entire series. We got Charlie Heaton playing Will Byers' brother Jonathan, and then of course one of the other main characters, huge character, David Harbour playing Jim Hopper. And I didn't know David Harbour before
No,
this series.
but he's the breakout of the whole thing because he's the adult with the
Absolutely.
big role, but the unknown compared to Winona Ryder and Matthew
Mhm.
Modine, and he's just fantastic. And like I feel like he gets better all the time as the series goes on. So he just took that role and owned it, and he's great.
Yeah, it plays the town chief of police who's entrusted to try to find this kid. And of course, he enters into this whole thing, very cynical and, works, real, ways of finding this kid. Obviously, he has no idea what he's getting into, along with everybody else in this town. Um, so it's a really like fun cast. And then there's other characters in this again. Karen Wheeler, uh, the mom. Didn't
And
really
there's some other
recognize.
like 80s type people that we can probably bring up later that aren't in this
Sure.
first episode when we talk about it.
Yeah.
Back to Matthew Modine, I just think
Yeah.
he's such a great inclusion too because like I remember him so well from 80s movies. Like, talk about a guy that kind of just disappeared. Although I watch him every single year because in my classroom we read the book Flowers for Algernon and then we watch the movie and from 2000 and he's the star of it. So I can tell my kids, hey, this is that guy from Stranger Things, playing the main character. But he's like, he's brilliant to me because he wasn't a huge star and he's definitely not anymore, but he's memorable to you and he makes you think back. And I think that's like the perfect type of casting instead of taking somebody that's going to maybe be too distracting or too well known.
Mhm.
But like I said, he came up in the movie Pop Star of all places that we talked about
Yes.
last week. And like it's a reference that, the audience can get if they are our age. And so I love that kind of stuff. And he's a good guy.
Yeah,
He's
for
good,
sure.
good in the role.
So while we're in the middle of the cast here, question for you: who was your favorite child character in this
It
series?
I don't know if this is the obvious one, but it is Dustin for sure. He's relatable, but what I really like about his character is that he looks like he should be that 80s like just stereotype character, kind of like the chunk in Goonies, and where
Mhm.
it's just you got your fat nerdy kid, and they make fun of him for that. Um, but
The toothless
you know,
portion. I mean, he's got
right,
that
and
going against him.
and there's bullies that make fun of him right away, so they address it. But he's so much more than that. And when I first saw him on the screen, like, oh, this kid's gonna be, whatever, like he's this stereotype. And it turns out he's funny, he's good in the role, he's much more beyond that. And you're not distracted by those things. They don't become everything about him like you might think of in like an 80s movie where, you're defined by whatever trait.
Mhm.
So, and as he gets older and grows, he continues to be good. So he's my favorite for sure. The other boys kind of, I don't, they kind of run together. Like it's hard to kind of differentiate some of the other characters in a way. So that's one of the reasons why I like him so much.
Yeah, and that's going to be mine as well. I like how later in the series, like him and Steve really, form a partnership and a bond between them. I think he does a great job of being kind of the funny one, kind of the comic relief, while also being serious and having a kind of a different take on things than the rest of the group. He isn't always just so full force ahead, like he thinks about things. Let's try this, and more often than not, he comes out on the right side of things. So I tend to agree with you as well. I think Dustin's just such a phenomenal character. And of course, in this first episode that we watch, we really don't get to see, Eleven's personality. She's so withdrawn and scared and just not knowing much of anything. Mike is a great character. He is, that, Paul from the Wonder Years type best friend. Like he's always going to have your back no matter what. So, Mike is a great character as well. But yeah, Dustin's kind of where I tend to land as well.
I like
So,
Steve.
oh, good.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you consider him a child. I like Steve, but when they brought Billy in, I don't know if it's just me, but I had a hard time telling the two of them apart sometimes.
Long
Like
flowing hair.
they look too similar to me. Like which guy is which, and I got confused. And so I like both of them, but it's like I don't know. I'm kind of slow sometimes, and they confused me. So
Sure. Sure. So we're going to move into a few fun facts here. Um, of course, this is written by the Duffer brothers. Um, so much of it, again, this goes back to the nostalgia. So much of it is inspired by E.T., The Goonies, Jaws, Poltergeist. I love how the little Wheeler sister is the little blonde-haired girl. So that just to me just brings you right to the Poltergeist aspect of things.
hopefully she didn't die a couple years later.
Correct. I'm hoping she's still with us. Um, One of the fun things that I found in this, so when the boys, Will and Dustin, are racing to Dustin's house for a comic, the one Will asks for is X-Men 134. And in that comic, this includes the Phoenix Saga, where Dark Phoenix, which is a female character, joins the X-Men to defeat the villain Mastermind by pinning him to a wall using her telekinetic powers. So, spoiler alert here, the final episode of this season, that's exactly what happens to the Demogorgon via Eleven's powers. So, I mean, they do a great job of foreshadowing in this.
I was gonna say, you know what that's called? Foreshadowing. But
Thank you, sir.
you got
Thank
it.
you.
You did it. Good job. You get an A.
Right? Yeah. You got any? Did you find any fun facts?
I don't know how fun they are, but I found a couple of things. So
Okay.
just since we brought up Gaten Matarazzo, who has this condition, it's called CCD, and I cannot pronounce the words, but he does use his position to raise money to cover costs for oral surgeries for other people who have
Oh,
that. So I
excellent.
thought that was nice. Natalia Dyer and Charlie Heaton, who plays Jonathan, so not Steve, her boyfriend in the show that she's making out with all the time. They've been a couple together. They're not married, but they've been a couple since 2016, since this show started.
And of course, those two are the ones who form a relationship, a lasting relationship through this series. So that makes sense.
It's set in Indiana, but it was filmed around Atlanta mostly. It was originally going to be
Okay.
set more in like Long Island, but that wasn't working. And the mall that they created for season 3 is also right outside Atlanta. And I believe our friends, Children of the 80s, I think Lindsay said on a show once that she actually went and visited that place and got to see it while it was filming, maybe, or something. So
Okay.
they're from the Atlanta area there, somewhere in Georgia. So I thought that was interesting.
That is pretty cool.
And my final fun fact is just for me, this entire first season, I always thought 11 was a boy, and I could not look at that character and realize it was a girl. Even when I couldn't
Really? Okay.
buy it. And again, it's another case where I thought she looked so much like Mike, probably like they were similar, and and I just, even though they kept saying, she's a girl, I like could not in my head come to terms with that. I'm like, no, that's another boy. They're all just friends. So I don't know. I've had some interesting viewpoints of the people on this show. Apparently,
Does it have anything to do with that she goes by her full name and Bobby Brown? Do you just cutting it right down to Bobby
no,
Brown? And
but we do love Bobby Brown
we
too on
do.
this show.
Yeah, that's my prerogative to like
So
Bobby
that
Brown.
throws me off as well.
Mm-hmm. One
Now,
other
if they would
thing.
have named her oh crap, what was that girl's name? What was the big son? One Rowie. Roni.
Oh, Roni. I thought Whitney Houston. That's his wife. Okay.
Her name would have been Roni, then maybe I would have been able to understand better.
You would have been just fine. One of the fun facts I have here is that Matt Duffer has one child, and the godmother to that child is Winona Ryder. So I thought that was kind of interesting as well.
All after the show started, that's the question, or did they know each other?
I would guess that's probably, the child was probably born during the run of the show, which has been extensive. I mean, of course, this premiered in 2016, and the final season is slated for 2025. So
very drawn out series. That is
Sure.
one of the things that makes it hard for me to kind of like stick with it and be excited about all the time.
It is making it, yeah, it definitely makes it hard. And of course, the end of the fourth season, this is, the one season that ended where, you didn't have a definitive win for the good guys. The first season, definitely a win, second, third. But the fourth season.
But
what's that?
I don't remember how they all ended, but.
Well, like I say, the first three seasons there was, kind of a win. There was, obviously some questions lingering, but for the most part it was a win. This one, and to four, yeah, not so much.
Yeah.
So we're gonna kind of just run through the episode for this. For our episode tonight, we covered season 1, episode 1. So again, we start out. This is the vanishing of Will Byers. We find out it's November 6th, 1983 in Hawkins, Indiana. And we have the first scene is a shot of the sky as it comes down on top of the camera pans down to the top of this lab. And of course, that's homage to E.T., the beginning of the extraterrestrial there. So it's just such a, they started out so creepy. You're in this dark lab, you got this panicked scientists running through the halls, the alarms are going off, the lights are flashing, and trying to get on the elevator, and he finally makes it to the elevator and then comes to find out that something has made its way into the elevator and grabs him, pulls him up, and so it's sets that tone pretty quickly for this is going to be a little rough, a little scary for the ride. And then, of course, we flash to our main 4 characters here, the boys playing Dungeons and Dragons in Mike's basement. And Mike is the dungeon master here. He's running the whole show. And we are introduced to this very powerful character, the Demogorgon, in his campaign. And I just, again, great foreshadowing here. This is going to be what they name the evil being in this first season. But I like how they just set it up, and it's a formidable opponent for these kids.
The thing I noticed in that scene there is that we meet the parents right away, and I feel like it's kind of like Charlie Brown, where they're, other than Winona Ryder, there aren't many parents involved, and so it's like these parents played a big role right there in the beginning. But then it's like, do we see them again? I don't remember them being much of anything after that.
Well, they're around.
I know they're around,
but it's not like they're, these kids are, latchkey kids. They ride their bikes everywhere.
They speaking lines, and they, they're. But it feels like that was about the most I ever remember seeing them.
Sure. Yeah, these kids are, they ride their bikes to school together in the morning. They ride them home after school at night. They're in their AV club. They kind of got free reign to do what they want around town. I thought it was. What's that?
If they really wanted to hit the nostalgia And the reference is they should have kept the parents off the screen, and they should have talked like the Charlie Brown parents. Wah, 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 wah.
So of course these kids, they're going home late on a school night, mind you. I feel 8 o'clock. I love they get up.
Well, it's very dark.
Yep, the three of them, they get on their bikes. I love the bikes, the banana
They
seat
got the
bikes
lights.
with the lights, which is just absolutely awesome.
There's a good
But we
score, background music playing at this part
Mhm.
too. It's really helping to get you into that 80s setting right away with that part is where I really started to notice it.
Well, and we have a major piece of foreshadowing here again, where during the game, when faced with the Demogorgon, Will decided to try to do a fireball attack on the Demogorgon, and he didn't roll the 13. And he tells Mike, "Hey, I rolled a 7. The Demogorgon got me." As he's riding away from Mike's place, and you're like, "Uh-oh," like that's got to come back to haunt you at some point. So we got Will, he's riding past the lab, which you just saw, the scientists get attacked. And man, this scene where his light on his bike cuts out just for a second, and he looks down at it, and when he looks up, you just see that shadowy figure backlit, and you can tell it's not a human, and it's just gangly with his huge head. But it's not like a great shot of it, but it's enough to really scare the hell out of you. And I just think that's such a great shot. And he goes off into the trees, crashes his bike, runs home, nobody's there. The thing's still following him. I kind of thought about Signs a little bit in this, like the shadow of the Demogorgon kind of reminded me of the aliens from Signs. There's the scene where he's in the house and he sees the shadow of it come up on the porch, which is a big, huge scene in Signs. So I just thought that was awesome.
Are they holding guns too at some point?
No.
There, like when he's in the shed and he's got his little rifle out and.
Well, and that's another thing I love. He knows right where the gun is and he knows how to use it. So
Of course.
he's been he's gone through gun training at this point. So I really love that. But I mean, he gets taken, and it's 9 minutes into the season series premiere of this, and it's just so creepy because like that shot of the tool shed, and it's just empty. Like there's not a sign of a struggle or anything. He's just gone, and you're really just left wondering
Vanishing, you could say.
Yes, you're wondering what is going on here. And then of course I think they bring in the title credits at that point, don't they? That's where they have the first.
Probably about right, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great start to the series. Introduces these 4 main characters quite well, and sets the stage that there's something nefarious going on in this town. We move on to the next morning. We meet Hopper for the first time. We see that he's a chain smoker, takes pills, drinks first thing in the morning. I love the scene where he's getting ready and he's brushing his teeth and immediately has a cigarette in right after it. I think that's great. And then we find out he's also a police officer. So this guy's got some demons, not well kept.
Small town cop.
Yeah, absolutely. So, then we meet Joyce for the first time, and Will's brother, Jonathan, and Joyce is just disheveled. She's can't find her keys to go to work. Jonathan, her older son, is the one who's in charge of making breakfast, and he gets yelled at for not waking Will up. It's like, well, she's just all over the place. Like this kid, Jonathan, seems like the responsible one who's, kind of running this household. He's got a job, we find out. That's why he wasn't at home the night before when Will came back, because he was out working, trying to earn money for this family. So, this family is, not well off. We come to find out that, the dad left them and is in Indianapolis. When Joyce, runs into Hopper at his office, raving that her son is gone. And I think she plays this role so beautifully, just that desperation of a mother, not really knowing where she should be going. It's just frantic, her mind's pulling her in a million different directions. But the one thing that never wavers with her through this entire season is that her son is alive. He is close by, and he's in danger, but he's still there. And just that fortitude of her is just unbelievable, and she carries it so well through this series, through this season at least.
I'm not sure if I'm as wild about the way she acts at the beginning of this, but I mean it's
Mhm.
good, but it's tough. It's tough to pull that off. So that's not why I was watching it again today, and it's just kind of like, I don't know. I wouldn't use the word cringy so much, but just
You know,
I don't know. It's a tough role though. It's tough
it is.
to
One,
to play that your kid's missing. So I'm sure she actually does a good job, and that's just my head.
well, what I loved was that in the beginning scene when she's talking to Jonathan, she's like, "He didn't come home last night," and he's like, "Well, he was over at the Wheelers." And so she calls over and she talks to Mike's mom, and she's and the mom's like, "Oh, he didn't come home last night," and she's like, "Oh, well, he just left for school," and she hangs up the phone, and the panic in her face, like, holy crap, this is real. Like, I don't know where my kid is, and it really sets in for her. I mean, that I thought it was powerful. I thought she did a great job with it. Um,
She
go,
does.
yeah,
I don't know why I said that. I'll go with you.
okay. We
Way to
head
go,
back.
Winona.
We head back to the Hawkins lab here, and this is our first time we get to meet Dr. Brenner, and he's the guy in charge of this whole lab. And so they head into the facility. They're in lockdown because of the events of the night before. And I love how the quarantine protocol calls for hazmat suits and Uzis. So something major's going on here. And they make their way into the lab, and they come into this room with this gaping hole in the wall and this glowing you know mess of whatever it is, and it's like howling almost, making these crazy noises. And I love his question: is that where it came from? Really? No shit. Like, I mean, that might be a good place to start. Like, this isn't of this world, so I think that'd be a good place to start looking. Might be in the crazy demonic door. So yeah, I don't know. That was kind of interesting. And then of course he mentions that the girl couldn't have gotten far, and that's where we see 11 for the first time. Making her way through the woods and comes upon this diner. We get our first popular music in this scene when she's in the diner. We've got "She Has Funny Cars" from Jefferson Airplane, released in 1976, playing in the background. And then of course we have the big cook who works there. I know the first time I watched this, like, he looks like a creeper, and I was extremely nervous for this young girl. And of course he turns out to be just the nicest
Yeah, he's very nice.
man who takes care of her and
And then
does
they
what he
shoot.
can. Yeah, and then they shoot him. That's what he gets for being a nice guy.
Doesn't seem necessary. I don't know why they would. Yeah, it gives you a lot to think about, because if these people, like, who are they? What, they're out to get this alien or whatever this is, but why do they need to kill this random just guy? That seems like maybe these guys aren't very nice.
Right. And of course, we've got guys coming in the back door trying to grab this girl who, we saw that she has telekinetic power. She had stopped a fan earlier while she was just sitting there, and all of a sudden she's able to, kill these two guys with guns, like it was nothing. And then of course Dr. Brenner comes in, so real quick, like, okay, these guys are same people from the lab, same outfit, and they stop at nothing to get what they need. And she's up against some major forces here. Not only some crazy thing running through the woods, but on the human side of things. We also had White Rabbit
Well,
playing here.
you wonder if she's even human or what. I mean, with these
Right.
powers, like, they called her the girl, but what is she? How does this work?
Right. Exactly. We also had a scene in this that'll come back to have major parts later in the series. The boys with the science teacher. I love the science teacher. He reminds me of Ned Flanders.
Oh yeah, that's a good part. They're all so excited for that radio thing.
Yep, they get their ham radio and they'll be able to talk to, you know, Australia. So just a little more insight into these boys, and I don't like to call them dorky, but I mean they are. They're the stereotypical into comics, into D&D, into they're part of the AV club. They may be the AV club for all we know.
You are the Brute Squad.
Exactly. So we've got, I thought that was a fun scene. While searching for Will, we find out that Hopper's daughter, he had a daughter and she has passed. So
Yes.
You're kind of wondering as this goes on if 11 is his daughter, if she was taken or what. But like you say, at this point, you don't know anything about this girl other than she's got a shaved head. She's tattooed with the number 11 on her wrist. And
she has powers.
And she comes more like from this lab, where the, crazy shit is happening. So
a lot of exposition in this episode, but yet it still leaves a lot of questions on top of that.
Right. Absolutely.
Going back to Hopper too.
Yeah.
He had one good line that I wrote down. It's kind of the contrast between him and Joyce.
Mm-hmm.
She's all worried and he's like, he's smoking and he's drinking and he's this everything. And when she's talking to him and she's something about her son being on the debate team, and he said, my mom thought I was on the debate team, but I was just screwing Chrissy Carpenter in the back of my Oldsmobile.
Right.
And just like how he's making jokes and he doesn't even like really care much about what she's saying. And it just sets up the contrast of those two characters, which is interesting because then of course they're going to eventually have something grow between them as well.
Well, and that they more than likely grew up together in this town. They are familiar with each other. She
would know who Chrissy Carpenter is.
Right, and she calls him Hop. Like, I mean, that, Hop. So, I mean, they grew up in this town. They've known each other, and so it's not, uncommon for him to probably crack wise. But again, he's looking at things matter-of-factly. He wants to reach out to the ex-husband. He says 99 times out of 100, the kid is with a relative or a parent. And of course, her mind goes directly to the one time. Yeah. So she, they are definitely on different sides of this. And to be fair, he does need to try to stay objective and cool-headed and just kind of work the process. Unfortunately, he has no idea what he is getting himself into. Another little bit we need to touch on here is this burgeoning relationship between Harrington. Yes, between Nancy and Steve. They're
horny.
For sure. And she's the good girl. She's the sweet girl. She's the good student. And he's the, ne'er-do-well, always trying to get in girls' pants. But again, this is like you said about the parents really not being all that involved. Like he's able to just hop on over to her place and sneak up, the roof and into her room. And, so they study, that I thought that was a sweet scene too, because he's got one thing on his mind. He wants to make out with her, and they do a little bit of that. But then I thought it was nice how, she put her foot down and he goes right back to reading the flashcards. I did like the inclusion of Toto's Africa here from 82. That was an excellent song to have in this opening episode as well. And then, of course, right at the end of the episode, Joyce is at home with Jonathan. The phone rings. She picks it up and you hear this breathing. And then you hear the Demogorgon, like, I don't know, clattering. I don't know what sound you would use. It's a great creepy sound.
That's a good word.
And, she, of course, believes it's him. And that just renews, like, okay, he's still with us somewhere. She doesn't know how or where, but, it just reinforces her belief that he is still with them and will be found. So
When at the very end, the kids run into 11 in the
Yes,
forest
and then
out there.
right, they're out and about trying to do what they can as young friends. They're going to go try to retrace his steps. And again, I like Dustin here too. He's they're giving him crap like he's being a wuss because he doesn't want to keep going, but he's like, hey, something bad befell our friend and we're going in the exact same place. Like, this isn't good. And then of course there's rustling in the trees and they turn, and here you find 11 who's ran away from the cafe, and now we've got our 5 main characters together.
There is one thing you left out. You're always
Oh,
very thorough, but you left out one character that took on kind of a cult
oh yes.
following, Barb.
Mhm.
You got to mention Barb, who
I'm
in
like the
her
rest of
short
the
screen
series.
time became very popular with a lot of people on the show as well.
Yeah, yeah. Barb is definitely a cult figure. We come to find out in episode 2 that she does get taken as well. And
Second one, I couldn't remember.
yep, it's in the
She doesn't
second
last
episode.
long.
No, she doesn't.
But
And
like, they'll
man,
put Barb on a T-shirt. She was so loved by some people.
well, and how the series kind of just brushed her aside too. Like, there wasn't a lot of mention of Barb. Or not as much of a concerted effort to get her back. Like, again, where are her parents in all of this? So yeah,
Will Byers and maybe Barb, but we don't care much about her.
yeah, we don't care about Barb. She's a ginger. We'll let her go. And Barb definitely had a look about her.
She did. She
had
had a vibe.
That ruffled collar, glasses, short hair. Yep. But what can you say? I mean, the 80s fashion, wasn't kind to a lot of people. So we're not gonna rip on Barb too much in that regard. So again, I this first episode sets into motion a lot of things, tries to give you a pretty good feeling of our main characters. Oddly enough, it's one of the shorter episodes in season 1. I think the runtime on it was 49 minutes. There are shorter ones, but I would have thought that first episode they would have just made it longer, because again, it's streaming. Doesn't matter if you make it a 2-hour episode, and then come back with hour episodes. So they did keep it short.
In this last season, they got pretty long, and
yeah,
I think about things that are too long like that.
Correct. Yes, not a big fan. You love nothing more than when it's over. So as long
as I'm satisfied.
That's right. A couple other questions for you here.
It's a good one coming up.
What is your favorite nostalgic element to this? We can keep it to the whole series or to this episode, but however you want to look at it. Okay.
So, we brought up the bikes and the score already, and I love that, and they'd be on the list. I have a very specific thing that stood out to me here. And it's the same thing like when I watched season 2 of Fargo that's set like in the early 80s. The wood paneling and the decoration in the houses, and the couches and the furniture, I just love that. And even though we don't have that anymore, everything looks so cozy. It's like the house in Freaks and Geeks. We did Freaks and Geeks. I just it's obviously very dated and has a look to it, but it gives me that nostalgic feel of growing up in these houses surrounded by this wood paneling and these couches with these patterns all over them, kind of this velvety feel to it. I love that. That's what stood out to me in this episode. I do have an overall thing for the whole show, but if you want to go next, you can.
Yeah, that was the thing for me too, is the houses and the
Really?
home decor. Yeah, and what I like is that, like, for example, the Wheeler's basement is perfect because it's like half-assed finished.
Yes.
Like there's parts of it that has cabinets and like where the kids play, they've got, the table set up, and there's a half-finished bathroom down there. But then you can also see like the steps aren't like closed in, and like there's a spot where there's like a tool bench over on the side, and I just love it. And like you say, the couches are patterned, and the lazy boy, we'll see that in the next episode. Like, there's just the home decor and and the look of that I just absolutely love. I think it just, you know, reeks of the 80s more than anything else, because cars are one thing, you know, I mean, you know, cars, you can drive cars forever. But that home decor is awesome. I like the bikes. I think was awesome. I
Well, and
loved it.
just kids riding bikes at night, not
Yep.
just the bikes, but just the act of the kids being out and riding from one house to another. I guess a lot of it though for us is we grew up in a small town, so like we could so relate to that kind of thing. Not less so when we're on the farm, but you know, still
Yep.
maybe if you grew up in a big city, maybe it's not quite the same. Although I think it probably was. I think
You'd
kids
still
rode
have
their
your
bike.
neighborhoods.
You
Yeah.
had your neighborhoods. You could bike anywhere, and so I love that too.
I like the banana seat, you know, that I think that is of the 80s. I think that's a great look. The clothes for me as well. It's like I said with Barb. I mean, she's got, you know, those mom jeans, the ruffled collar, um, yeah, stripes, you know, horizontal stripes, you know, on the shirts and the tennis shoes. So the clothes, I would say, if not for the decor, the clothes would be the big one for me.
Well, and that kind of then that gets more and more as the series goes on. So my favorite nostalgic element in the whole series is season 3 with the mall. That mall they
Yep.
built or redesigned was just
Mhm.
that's my favorite season, and it's mostly for that. It made the show more fun. You know, it's a very serious show and it's all this stuff going on. But like when they went to the mall and then I watched today the Material Girl's playing and Eleven's out shopping and you're seeing a whole different side of her and you got Steven and Ethan Hawke's kid working at the
Ice
ice
cream.
cream place and
Yeah.
everything.
And the stupid
You know,
outfits. God, that's great.
yeah, and it's like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but you know, and I loved that part and they did it so well. And I just miss we didn't grow up with a mall that close, but like
Hmm.
we would go to Sioux Falls. But I came up here to the cities often enough, and the Burnsville Mall I've been going to my whole life, and it's just a well, it's closing. I mean, it's turning into something else because there's nothing left in it, and it's just
Right.
so sad. It was so awesome. I love the mall. I love the look of it. And it was a place where you know kids could actually hang out, and usually they didn't get in a ton of trouble there. Like, you have a place to go and just and do that. Like we would go to Sioux when we could drive, we go to Sioux Falls and we could hang out at the mall too.
Hmm.
So I love that season. That's my favorite season, and a lot of it has to do with that. It was the most fun season from what I remember.
Yeah, and I think it was the beginning of season 2. Um, the arcade was a big part
Mm,
of that, and I
that's good too.
love an old fashioned arcade
Well, that kind
with
of
all
goes
the
hand in hand with
quarters.
the mall.
Yep, yep.
We
But
did
this
have the
was a
crappy Marshall
standalone.
Mall nearby, and we had a great arcade in there where I would go all the time.
Yep. But this is kind of a standalone strip mall on the corner arcade,
Right.
uh, and so that is absolutely awesome. Yeah. So the last thing here we're gonna get into is, you know, thoughts of the series moving forward. Like you said, you've kept up with it. You said third season was your favorite because the mall was, yeah, the mall was awesome. Um, I still think the first season is probably my favorite overall. I think I've watched the third season or the first season probably 3 times. I think it just does such a great job. Um, but at the same time, I don't think there's a real weak season in any of them.
Well, the other thing about season 3 that I liked is he brought in whatever her name was, Maya Hawke. I don't remember her
Mhm.
character, but she
Robin.
was a great addition. And then
Yep.
I don't remember when Billy started, but Billy's in season 3 and all the moms are
Mhm.
ogling him. Like it
Yep.
brought in some fun new characters on top of this other stuff. So
Yep.
it gave it a new life, I thought
Yep.
at that time.
Well, and that was the other thing too, is what were your favorite character additions? I think Robin is a huge one because she just doesn't take any shit from Steve. She's great. And then the other one for me is Max. You know, obviously
Yep.
she has a huge role in season 4, but she came in. I was it season 2. I think she came in at least by season 3 because I
She
think
was in season 3 because I
she's
watched part of
Billy's
it today.
she's
'Cause
Billy's sister.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I thought she was great too, because another strong female character to go along with Robin and 11, of course.
So I'm looking forward to it being over. Like I like watching it. I was under the understanding that last season was going to be the last season.
Okay.
And as I'm watching it, I'm like, "Oh, this is the final season." And the episodes were so long and I'm like, and they were good, but it was just like so time consuming and so much
Mhm.
going on. And I'm like, "Okay, but it's going to be over. So it's totally worth it." And
Yep.
then it ended and there's this big cliffhanger. I'm like, "Wait, this is not done yet." It's like,
Right.
"Come on." So I'm excited for it to be over, but I kind of wish it already was, but I'm obviously going to watch it when it comes out. You mentioned new characters. The other thing, it added other 80 stars too, like Paul Reiser's been in the show.
Hmm. Yep.
And Sean
Sean
Astin and
Astin.
Carrie Elways was in the show too, Princess
Hmm.
Bride. And I saw today they're adding Linda Hamilton in season 5.
Oh, really?
So,
Okay.
they keep doing stuff like that, and that's great. But it's the kind of show that like I'm not as in love with it as some people. And I think the biggest issue for me is all this time. It's like 3 years between
Yes.
seasons. It's in
Yes.
6 years we've had one season, and now
Hmm.
it's like, what are we doing here? Like,
Right.
why is this show taking so much longer to make than any other show out there? So I would just like it to get there and wrap it up, and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting.
Right.
So
I
that's
tend
the
to
up and
agree with
down
that.
love hate with it that I have. But
Yep.
overall, it's
Well,
still
and last season, yeah, was it Vicna? I think was the character, and so
yeah.
now you have like this central, because the Mind Flayer was different, and then you had, the third season, it was like all of these people mashed into this big, monster, and now you had like this final boss in season 4. It's like, okay, they're gonna wrap this all up, and then, all hell broke loose at the end. So I wish, I mean, season 4, if they would have wrapped it up there, I would have been completely fine. The fact that there's a 5th season I like, but I completely agree with you. This is way too drawn out.
Because it was 3 years before season 4 came out, and the kids are so old now. It's like, okay,
Right.
well, this is gonna be it. I mean, we're gonna end it here, and then they didn't. So it's like, and then it wasn't season 5 didn't come. It's like we've been waiting and waiting and waiting. So
Right. Yeah.
anyway,
We're waiting for the dorm room of terror or something, because these kids have got to be in college at this point. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna stick with it for sure. I love it. I think they did a great job, especially with this first season. So and it was definitely all the rage back in 2016. So worth a talker or two tonight. To wrap up this evening,
well, this is a good
our
one.
our top 5, because this is in the 80s and it's a TV show, we are going to draft our top 5 child sitcom stars of the 80s.
And this wasn't a sitcom, but most of the child
Oh,
stars were sitcom stars, and that's what you think of most of these from. So,
right.
and
Yes,
even if they were on a serious show, a lot of these kids probably were on a sitcom at one point, anyway. So,
sure. Yep. But, we're going to stick to more TV shows rather than the movies, for that reason.
oh yes,
So I'll have the first pick and you'll go second. And then do you have enough to put together a third list?
I have 22 listed here. I got plenty.
Oh, you've got more than enough. All right. So my number one pick, I'm sure you can guess it. We talked about this show on this podcast. I'm going Mr. Fred Savage.
Samantha. Oh,
Yeah, I'm going Mr. Fred Savage from the
you
Wonder Years.
totally surprised me.
Really? Okay. Fair
Well,
enough.
I thought Alyssa Milano was number one with a bullet, and so now
Yeah,
I know how much you like her. So should I take her just to make you mad? I'm not going to do that.
you could do that. Absolutely.
Well, I don't. I mean, I like her, but I
Yeah.
actually there's a girl that I liked actually probably more back then.
So you like her, but you don't like her like her.
Fred Savage, first choice. That's a good one.
Thank you.
Just you surprised me. We don't get a lot of surprises here when it comes to first picks.
All right.
All right, well, I am going to pick. So this is one of these problematic shows because of the dad, but the son on the show was the shit, and I loved him. And I'm taking Theo, Malcolm Jamal Warner, because throughout the '80s, there was nobody more fun for me to watch and
Yeah.
follow than him.
Yeah, he was outstanding. I mean, of course, I didn't get the Cosby
You weren't
Show.
watching. I could have saved him for the 5th pick because you would have never picked him, I'm sure. But
No, here's the difference is I didn't need to see these at the time. These are, I can go back to the 80s and pick whoever I want.
You're more open now for whatever. Okay.
I am more open, yes, because I've watched, Theo on the
Nice.
Cosby Show throughout the years. So that's a great pick. He was definitely one on my highlighted list. So I am going to grab one here that, again, I didn't watch at the time, but you can't argue with it. I'm going Michael J. Fox as Alex on Family Ties.
That's another good one. And again, you passed up Alyssa Milano.
I did, because, Michael J. Fox, come on, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's a great pick.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
You're going for the big names on this one.
I'm going for the best child stars of TV sitcoms of the 80s.
All right, I am going to pick. Here's a big name, and he was on multiple sitcoms, and he has continued to be important as an actor to this day still throughout movies and TV shows galore. But he started, I think he was on Silver Spoons at one point, and then he was on The Hogan Family. He was all over in the 80s. Jason Bateman.
Yes.
I love Jason Bateman.
How can't
I liked him then, and
Jason
I like
Bateman
him now. And
well, the reason you love Jason Bateman so much is because you are Jason Bateman. When I watch shows with Jason Bateman, I immediately think of Brad.
Okay.
So I completely go along with that. All right, we're gonna end the suspense. Third pick. We're taking my first celebrity crush of all time. I'm taking Alyssa Milano from Who's the Boss?
Okay. Well, then I'm going to follow that up with another female who was just as attractive and much more sexualized on her show, maybe too young, as we learned from the author of many of the episodes, and that is Christina Applegate.
Yep. That's a good one. I got her on my list.
Not the next one on my list, but I wanted to take her because we're going big names here, so I'm trying to keep up.
Yeah, and that's a great pick. She was, I took her over Faustino to put on this list. She was definitely a reason I tuned into that show was to see Christina Applegate.
And that's, you obviously we liked her, but she was so good though too. Like
she was amazing. Yeah,
perfect in that role.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right, you take Jason Bateman because he's continued to be great in things throughout his entire life, and you can't argue that. My next pick is in that same vein. I am going with Doogie Howser himself. I'm going with Neil Patrick Harris. Love him not only as Doogie but as Barney, and in just about anything else that I can get him
Girl, which we watched and did an episode on in a different role.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go now with one. I don't remember what channel. I think it was ABC. You probably watched this show. I was a big fan of Webster, and the 80s was known for its diminutive African American actors, and Emmanuel Lewis was wonderful, and I loved Webster.
Yeah, that is a great one to go with. Oh,
there's so many. I got so many here.
And I might take some crap for this last pick of mine. But I loved this show, and he was the coolest guy on the show. All the girls had crushes on him. I'm going with Kirk Cameron. I'm going Growing Pains.
Yes. Looking back at the time, I loved him, and I loved that show for a couple of years. I didn't stick with it long, but he was great. And then you had Boner along with him, just like Cockroach with Theo. They were the bros, and they were great together.
And you never turned on a boner. You gotta love that character.
No, I have Kirk Cameron. He's one of the next highest ones I have listed here too.
So what is your last pick for this?
Oh boy, so I could pick any one of these. I am going to go with. So no, I'm not going to pick him. Am I missing anybody at the top of my list here? Nobody stands out separately. Okay, I'm picking. Screw it. I'll take the other diminutive kid, Gary Coleman.
Oh, that's a good one. Now,
What
here's
you
the
talking about,
thing.
Willis?
Halfway through this, I started thinking, was Gary Coleman a child?
He was, wasn't
Um,
he? He's a kid.
well, yeah, I
At
think
least at
so.
first.
You're right. He had been when he started, right?
I'm sure he
Um,
was.
so that is going to be. So now we're going to pick for Pete.
Yes.
Um,
You're first.
oh yeah, he totally would have.
I got a really good one here. I was gonna pick this person, but I'm gonna give it to Pete because I know he also liked this person. So, but you're
I
first.
I took a couple. I've got a few on my list specifically for Pete. The first one I'm going to take, though, I think is maybe the biggest name left on my list, and I'm going to take Ricky Schroeder from
Ricky Schroeder.
Silver Spoons.
He was a big star.
Yes, he was.
Don't call him Ricky anymore.
Nope.
All right, so I got this one right. I was gonna pick her early because I had a huge crush on her, but then I went with bigger names. So it's a perfect pick for Pete because he also did. We both loved the show My Two Dads, and Stacy Keenan was just great. And then she went on to be in the 90s, but she went on to be on Step by Step too. But
Yep.
me and Pete both love My Two Dads. We both love Stacy Keenan, so I will pass her off to his list.
Yep. That was one of the two that I specifically
I was wondering if you'd
took.
even have that down, if you'd even know who that was, because you didn't have NBC and you never probably watched the show.
I didn't know the show, but I recognized her from Step by Step because I did watch that. So, but I remember him talking about that more than once on this show. So I was gonna.
And also, speaking of, we just mentioned on Stranger Things, Paul Reiser on My Two Dads.
Yep. Okay, the next one I'm going to take for Pete, God rest his soul. I'm taking Benji Gregory, played Brian on Elf.
Oh, okay. I forgot who that was for a second. He was the kid on Elf.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, I saw him listed, and I'm like, I really didn't like the kids on Elf very much, so I left him off my list.
No, but Pete, was a big Elf fan, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
no, that's a
so
good one.
I'm going that route.
All right, well, I'm going to pick. I'm going to go, since I picked Stacy Keenan, I'm going to pick a guy this time. Maybe you'll add another girl to the list. Are you gonna or not? Otherwise, I got.
I'm looking one last one up here that I didn't put on my list, but he's a great pick.
Actually, no, I'm gonna pick the highest one on my list here. I'm kind of surprised you didn't take this person.
Okay.
Speaking of moving on, you mentioned Neil Patrick Harris. We all liked her as a kid, but she turned into an absolute smoke show on How I Met Your Mother. Danica McKellar, Winnie Cooper.
Okay, so
It's a
now
shame she wasn't on more things because when she was on How I Met Your Mother, it's like, wow.
yeah, I would have liked to have put her on one thing. So that kind of screwed the pooch for my last pick because I was gonna throw on Josh Saviano
You can.
because he is the perfect best friend, much
You mean
like
Marilyn
Pete.
Manson?
Yes. So now, okay, so I got quite a few left here. You know what? I'm gonna throw on one last lady of the '80s here. I'm going Tiffany Amber Thiessen, Saved by the Bell.
Yeah, she barely cracks the list.
She barely cracks the list, but the
Because
first season was all '89.
well, actually the first season was called Good Morning Miss Bliss, and she wasn't on it, and it was 88, 89. And that's I almost picked Mark Paul Gosselaar because he actually had 2 seasons in the 80s. But yes, Tiffany Amber Thiessen did start in 89.
Yep.
So she just cracks the threshold.
I got to tell you, I'd rather go
More of a
home with,
90s kid, but she counts.
I'd rather go home with Pete's list than my list. I got to tell you, Pete's list is a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's true.
For sure.
All right. I got more. You want to go first, or what do you got?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, so I had Mark Paul Gosselaar. I mentioned him.
Yep.
So I had Jason Bateman. I also had Justine Bateman down.
Mm-hmm.
Mallory was wonderful. Kim Fields, Tootie. You could have picked several facts of life, but she was the one that kind of stood out. or Mindy Cohn. Punky Brewster, Soleil Moon Frye.
Yep.
She was a good one. Nicole Eggert from Charles in Charge. I had a huge crush on Nicole Eggert. So Joey Lawrence is more known for Blossom in the 90s, but he was on Give Me a Break in the 80s as an even younger kid. So Joey Lawrence is on my list. Obviously, a lot of Cosby kids, but Keisha Knight Pulliam played Rudy, and she was so cute. She was so great for the first couple seasons. She was awesome.
Yep.
Janet Jackson was on. She started on Good Times, and then I forgot to write down. She was on another show in the 80s, and I forgot to write it down. I'm drawing a blank, but she counted.
Okay.
2 left from Full House: Jodie Sweetin and Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen.
Yep. Yeah, I had Jodie down because she was the middle child. She was just, she wasn't there for cuteness. She wasn't there.
The one I didn't like the show a whole bunch, but she's probably the one I liked the best of those kids.
Yep. And that's why I have her on my list here. So the only one I have left then is Sarah Gilbert from Roseanne.
Oh, that's it, huh?
Yeah, that was you checked off the rest of them here on yours. So
Josh Saviano.
Yep. Well, I had
Dana
from the Wonder Years.
Todd Bridges from Different Strokes as well. Sure. People who got in big trouble later, but
right. Yeah. So I think we got that was I said I already had 2 from the Wonder Years with Danica McKellar and my number 1 overall pick. So I was like, do I put Saviano on my list or not? But I mean, I loved him. He was awesome.
So. He was. All right, that was a fun list to make. It'll be interesting to see how the voting goes on that one because they're all great, and I think a lot of people will see those lists and think, "Wow, yeah, I like those people." That brings me back. That's what we try to do here.
I like them. They seem smart.
Yes.
Well, excellent.
Geez, I'm drawn. Hey, Gifford.
Yeah.
You know who could play a great mall show anytime in the 80s?
Ooh. I bet you Preacher Row.
Pack them like Tiffany and Debbie Gibson. Who else could do that?
Preacher Row would have them all the way to the top end of the rotunda, floor of the rotunda.
They'd be hanging over the overhangs on the 2nd and 3rd floor there.
Absolutely, it'd be awesome. Love those guys. They'd kill it.
All right, that was a fun one. A lot of nostalgia. That's what we love. Even though it's 2016, we got to go all the way back to the 80s tonight. Good pick.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thanks for listening, everybody.
And as we record this, we don't know what we're going to do next week.
That's right. Make sure to
they're not. They're not going to go vote for the poll when they hear this.
Oh, so. That's right. Because it's a couple weeks after that.
We put out a poll. You're going to pick, and we will figure out after we're done recording sometime what we're going to do. It's going to be fun.
We got 4 choices. The 4 choices for that were
Deadpool,
La La Land,
The Nice Guys,
Catastrophe. Yeah. All good choices.
Yep. All right. Bye.
See ya.
No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. It's not that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start to me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do.